Welcome to the shop where today I'm installing the Quadboss clutch kit in my 2013 Polaris RZR. Now this kit comes with detailed instructions. It comes with a white spring for the primary, a green spring for the secondary, and it comes with 3 new weights. The 3/8 socket and about a 6-inch extension. We'll go ahead and remove our 8 cover bolts. With all 8 screws out, we can remove the cover. Cover can be a little bit tricky. Just got to be careful. In order to remove the primary, you're going to need a 5/8 wrench. You need some kind of bar here. That way you can lock this primary down so it don't turn on you. Now you want to make sure that you don't stick your pry bar in here where the spider slides, where it slides up and down. You want to put it on the outside here. This bolt is torqued at about 40 foot-pounds, so it's not that hard to break loose. It just takes a little effort. This bolt can be a trick to get out, but once you get it out, you want to make sure you keep all your washers and your spacer on this bolt. You want to make sure that it goes back together the same way you pulled it apart. With the primary bolt out, we can take our primary pulley, slide it into the clutch and thread it down. And you can feel it when it pulls loose. It don't take much. And you want to pay attention to this belt. I forgot to mention that. Most likely when you're sitting here looking at it, you'll be able to read it like that right there. You want to make sure you put it back on the same way that you're pulling it off. Now this is only torqued at about 15 foot-pounds, so you should be able to hold it with your hand and break this bolt loose. Now you're going to want to pay attention when you pull this pulley off because it's going to have shims behind it. And you want to make sure them shims go back the way they're removed from. And like my shim stayed on the primary shaft. You can see this right here is the shim. You want to make sure it stays on there. I don't know if you can see it, but there's an X right here below my finger on this spider. And there's serial numbers right here on the top cover. You want to make sure that those go back in the same position that they come off of. If you're removing the spider, you're also going to want to mark your clutch assembly here. That way you can put it all back together the way it come apart. The spring that's in here is under just a little pressure. It's not under a lot. So you're going to want to work your way around and loosen them all up, and not take them all the way out at once. That way it don't bind up on you. And once you get them loose, you can take your hand, you squeeze it together just a little. It don't take a lot of pressure. And you can use this tool if you want to while you got it on here. All you got to do is put this back on, thread your bolt down, it's going to hold it in place for you. But it's not real stiff. The factory spring ain't. Now I may use this on the new spring. It might be a little stiffer, but the factory spring is not a problem. Off, you can ease off on the spring, pull the top cover off. In order to remove the stock weights, you're going to need an 1/8 Allen wrench along with a 3/8 socket. This bolt should just wiggle out. If you've got very many miles on it, you may have a little rust, you may have a little more trouble getting it out, but it should just slide right out. With the bolt out, you can remove the factory weight. With the weights in, we can go ahead and install our new white spring. And we can put our clutch cover back on. And again, you want to make sure you line up your X with your serial numbers. You want to make sure your spring's seated good. 3/4 inch wrench. All you do is ease it up. When you got it snug down, you thread your bolts in pretty much by hand. With all those tightened down, we can remove the primary and we're done with it. It's ready to go back on the back. On this secondary, what you're using this tool for is to compress the spring so you can get this little clip off, this little snap ring. All you got to do is tighten it enough to take your tension off of this snap ring. Then you can take your snap ring pliers, pull the snap ring off, loosen the clutch up, change the springs out, put it back together with the snap ring off. All you got to do is loosen the nut, and everything just comes apart. Everything back on in the order that you took it off. When you go putting this on, you're going to have to line it up. It ain't going to take much to just push it over just a little and get it to line up. And all you got to do is compress it enough so you can get the snap ring back on. With the snap ring on, before you release the pressure, you want to make sure it's seated good. Just visually look. And I like to spin it just a little to make sure it's seated. With it seated, we can pull it back. Slide it on, make sure it goes all the way on. Install your bolt. Torque it to about 15 foot-pounds, I believe, in spec. Make sure you put the belt back on the direction that it come off. Install the primary in the belt. And with just a little pressure on it, you can spin the secondary a little, get the belt to sit down in it a little further, make the primary a little easier to go on. The primary on, we can go ahead and get our bolt, make sure all our washers, our little rubber sleeve, our little plastic sleeve and everything's still in place. And we can wiggle it back in. For this one, you're going to need a little bigger torque wrench. Take a 5/8 on it and torque it down. Just like coming out, this cover's a little bit tricky. You want to watch what you're doing because you want to make sure it seals good. Started, we can work our way around and just run them up. I don't like to tighten them the first go around. I like to get them all pretty snug, then come back around and tighten them all. With all of them snugged up, we can go back around and tighten them the rest of the way up. With the cover installed, we can go ahead and reinstall our vent, our intake for our clutch. With this side started, before you tighten it up, you'll go ahead and drop your bolt on the other side and make sure everything's lined up. And go ahead and start it.